In 1972, Michael Reynolds walked into a garbage dump outside Taos, New Mexico, picked up a used car tire, and had an idea that would get his architecture license revoked, his livelihood investigated by federal regulators, and his name attached to some of the most efficient buildings ever constructed in the American West. The tire weighed 40 labilai. He had a theory that you could pack 300 lalbi of rammed earth into it, stack hundreds more just like it into a thick curved wall, and build a structure so thermally massive that it would hold a spring morning's temperature through the worst blizzard New Mexico could produce. No furnace, no air conditioning, no utility hookup, no bill ever. He tested it. It worked. He tested it again. It kept working. Over the next 17 years, Reynolds built 32 of these houses in the desert outside Taos. In the winter of 1993, a National Geographic photographer visited the Earthship built by television actor Dennis Weaver in Ridgway, Colorado. The temperature outside registered 8° F. Inside 70 situdig, no furnace running. The photographer told his editor the instruments must have been wrong. His editor agreed. 53 years later, Michael Reynolds is 79 years old, still building and still banned in 48 states. The houses are still warm. This is the story of the house that heats itself forever. And the architecture license they revoked to make sure you never build one. The archive opens outside Taos, New Mexico, in the autumn of 1974. Reynolds is 29 years old, freshly suspended from architectural practice for the preliminary work he has already done, and he's building what will become known as the Thumb House. The budget is $6,000. The primary structural material is used car tires collected free from the same garbage dump where the idea began. The construction method is not complex. A tire is laid flat on prepared earth. A sledgehammer drives loose soil and subsoil into the cavity of the tire. 300 lalaborders per tire, compacted in layers, until the rubber shell holds a brick that does not rot, does not corrode, and achieves a compressive strength that later materials testing against ASTM standards will confirm exceeds the minimum requirement for residential load-bearing walls. Hundreds of these tires are stacked in offset rows, the gaps between them filled with aluminum cans set in concrete and recycled glass bottles. The whole mass covered with earth plaster. The resulting wall is approximately 30 inches thick, with a total thermal mass in a standardized home of roughly 95,000 dollars. The south face of the structure is floor-to-ceiling glass, angled at the latitude plus 5 degrees, calibrated to catch the winter sun at its low angle. A roof overhang, calculated to the solar geometry of the site, blocks the high-angle summer sun entirely, while allowing the low-angle winter sun to penetrate the full depth of the interior. The geometry is self-regulating. No thermostat, no sensors, no controls, no moving parts. That is the heating and cooling system. But Reynolds was not building a temperature experiment. He was building a complete life support vessel. And the thermal system was only the first of 4 interlocking systems that together eliminate every recurring utility cost a conventional house carries. The second system is water. Reynolds designed the roof to function as a catchment surface, channeling 100% of rainfall through gutters into underground systems, typically 10,000 to 30,000 gallons depending on the household's needs. The water passes through 4 filtration stages before it reaches a kitchen tap, beginning with a coarse filter at the system inlet and ending with a ceramic carbon filter at the point of use. The gray water from sinks and showers then flows into a contained indoor botanical cell, a planter bed inside the living space where plants process the water biologically, removing nutrients and pathogens through root absorption. That water exits the indoor cell and feeds an outdoor botanical cell, then continues to a toilet flush reservoir. 1 gallon entering the system serves 4 uses before it leaves. In Taos, New Mexico, which receives 13 inches of rainfall annually, a 1,500 square foot roof catchment area collects enough water for 2 adults with a 30% surplus. The third system is food. The south-facing greenhouse zone that charges the thermal mass is not wasted space between uses. Reynolds designed it as a year-round growing area. Residents at the Greater World community grow bananas, papayas, citrus, and tropical vegetables at 7,000 feet elevation in a climate that sees snow in May. The greenhouse does not require supplemental heating because the thermal mass behind it maintains the zone temperature above freezing through all but the most extreme cold snaps. The fourth system is electricity. The total electrical load of a house with no furnace, no air conditioner, no electric water heater, and no pump running on continuous supply pressure is approximately 1/10 of a conventional American home's load. A photovoltaic array of 112 to 3 kW combined with a 48V battery bank powers lighting, refrigeration, communication, and small appliances indefinitely. At the scale of consumption an Earthship requires, the solar installation that would be inadequate for a conventional home is more than sufficient. These 4 systems together eliminate the utility bill entirely. Not reduce, eliminate. The average American household pays separately for electricity, gas or heating fuel, water, and in many cases, sewage treatment. An Earthship resident pays for none of these. The construction cost, which is comparable on a per-square-foot basis to conventional construction because of the labor intensity of rammed earthwork, is the last payment the house ever requires. Here is the physics as plainly as it can be stated. Dense mass absorbs heat slowly and releases it slowly. The tire walls absorb solar energy during daylight hours and return the stored heat to the interior during the cold night, running a daily thermal cycle that requires no fuel input. The south glass is the charging mechanism. The roof overhang is the seasonal switch. The buried rear wall, partially set into the hillside, draws on the constant 56-degree temperature of the Earth at 4 feet depth, which acts as a thermal floor in winter and a heat sink in summer. That first winter, the temperature outside the thumb house dropped to 12 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 consecutive nights. Reynolds had not installed a furnace. He slept in the house anyway. The interior temperature held at 60°. He wrote one sentence in his journal that night. The wolves knew what to do. He was not, in 1974, thinking about the industry. He was thinking about physics and garbage and the possibility that a house could stop costing money the moment it was finished. But here is what the thumb house threatened. Whether Reynolds understood it at the time or not, the United States residential energy market generates approximately $450 billion in annual revenue. Heating and cooling account for roughly 48% of that figure. Every dollar of that $450 billion flows through a supply chain. Fuel producers, utility companies, HVAC manufacturers, their parts and refrigerant suppliers, their installation contractors, their maintenance networks. A house that heats and cools itself permanently does not participate in that supply chain. Not partially, not with exceptions, permanently. From the day it is completed, it requires nothing from anyone. You cannot meter a tire wall. You cannot send a monthly bill to 95,000 AD of rammed earth. You cannot charge for the slow release of stored solar heat. The house that needs nothing is from the perspective of every business model built around selling heating and cooling as a recurring service, not just competition. It is a category error. It is the wrong kind of solution to the problem. And the closer it comes to looking like the right answer, the more necessary it becomes to keep it off the approved list. Reynolds spent the next 15 years refining the design. Better roof catchment systems feeding underground systems. indoor greenhouse zones using gray water from sinks and showers to grow bananas, papayas, and citrus at an elevation where standard gardens died in May. Small photovoltaic panels running the minimal electrical load of a house, with no furnace, no air conditioner, and no water heater running on gas. The designs evolved. The core remained: thermal mass, passive solar geometry, and the deliberate elimination of every system that required a monthly payment to operate. By the late 1980s, Reynolds had built enough structures, and enough of them had performed well enough for long enough that the New Mexico Construction Industries Division could no longer ignore him. In 1989, they revoked his architecture license. The stated reason? Building without proper permits, using materials not approved by applicable codes, and endangering public safety. That last charge is the one worth examining most carefully. Not one of Reynolds's 32 structures had experienced a structural failure. Not one resident had been harmed. The New Mexico Construction Industries Division could point to 0 injuries, 0 collapses, 0 documented safety violations in any physical structure Reynolds had built. What they could point to was that none of the materials he used appeared in the appropriate sections of the Uniform Building Code. The tires were not on the approved list. Therefore, under the law as written, the house was illegal. Whether the house was safe was a question that the approved list was not designed to ask. Now, we need to talk about who wrote the approved list. The International Code Council is a private nonprofit organization headquartered in Washington, D.C. It writes the International Residential Code, the document that governs residential construction standards in all 50 U.S. states. It is updated every 3 years through a voting process. The voting membership of the ICC includes building officials and representatives from the building products manufacturing industry. The corporate members of the ICC include the Portland Cement Association, the American Chemistry Council, the American Forest and Paper Association, the National Association of Home Builders, USG Corporation, and CertainTeed. These organizations do not fund the ICC out of civic generosity. They fund it because the ICC's output directly determines what materials are legally required in American residential construction. Their membership gives them a vote in the process that writes the rules their competitors must navigate to enter the market. Section R316 of the IRC prohibits the use of tires in habitable wall construction. The stated rationale: tires off-gas volatile organic compounds at temperatures above 400 degree F. Reynolds's counter-argument, confirmed by independent materials testing: tires encased in 300 LEB of rammed earth never approach temperatures anywhere near 400 D. The structural mass surrounding them acts as thermal insulation that makes the fire scenario physically implausible in a buried wall. The code makes no distinction between an exposed tire and a tire buried in compacted soil. That distinction is not scientifically complex. It was never made. Section R602 requires engineered lumber or steel framing as the residential structural system. An alternative structural system, meaning anything not on the approved list, requires a licensed structural engineer to certify the design with a professional stamp. Most structural engineers will not certify an Earthship structure, not because the walls fail under testing, but because no structural engineer wants to be the first in their jurisdiction to stake their professional license on something their errors and omissions insurance does not cover. The certification pathway exists in theory. In practice, it requires someone to go first, and no one has a financial incentive to be first. Giston Jacobson, Reynolds's longtime partner and co-director at Earthship Biotecture, summarized this in an interview that Reynolds has never publicly contradicted. The codes were never written to keep people safe. They were written to keep people paying. Reynolds appealed the license revocation. His license was partially restored in 1994 with conditions restricting him from commercial practice. He established Earthship Biotecture as a formal company. He published 3 volumes on Earthship construction that became the most widely referenced off-grid building documents in the world. He kept building. Dennis Weaver understood the idea before most architects did. Weaver, best known as the actor Chester on Gunsmoke for 19 seasons, had made enough money to build whatever house he wanted. He visited Reynolds's compound in the late 1980s and commissioned an Earthship in Ridgway, Colorado, at an elevation of nearly 7,000 feet in a valley that experiences sustained periods of negative temperatures every winter. His completed Earthship cost $150,000, which by 1990 was the cost of a modest conventional home in the same area. He spent nothing on heating after the day it was finished. He spent nothing on cooling. He grew food in the greenhouse through Rocky Mountain winters. He died in February of 2006 at the age of 81 in the house, on a day when the temperature outside was below zero. The family reported the interior temperature at the time of his death as 70 Satuturg. No furnace running, no fuel burned, 70 Satuturg, on the day he died. In 2007, a documentary film called Garbage Warrior followed Reynolds through his legal battles and into his fieldwork. It reached over 10 million views online. The international response was immediate. Belgium, France, Scotland, Bolivia, Argentina, Cambodia, Malawi were all building Earthships with government support in countries where the International Residential Code either did not apply or had been adapted to accommodate alternative materials. Then, in January of 2010, a 7.0 earthquake struck Haiti. 230,000 people died. The damage was concentrated in exactly the type of construction the IRC had promoted for 50 years. Concrete block, unreinforced, built to minimum standards. Reynolds mobilized a volunteer team within 72 hours. He flew to Port-au-Prince and began teaching Haitian builders to construct earthbag structures from the rubble of the buildings that had just killed 230,000 people. In 10 days, 6 demonstration structures were complete. The Haitian government formally invited him to continue. He stayed 3 weeks. When he left, 30 Haitian builders had been trained in the method. FEMA's prefabricated temporary housing units at approximately $10,000 each began arriving in Port-au-Prince the following month. Now, stand inside an Earthship in Taos. It is the second week of January. The outdoor temperature this morning is at 4 degrees F. The sky is cloudless. The light on the high desert is flat and silver in the way of winter mornings at 7,000 feet. Brilliant and cold at once. A light that carries the idea of warmth, but not the substance of it. You walk through the entry. The air changes immediately. Not the temperature yet, the air itself. It is still with a quality that resembles the interior of a stone building in summer. Slightly pressured, cool without being cold, carrying a faint mineral scent that your nervous system registers before your mind has time to interpret it. The scent of deep earth, the scent of mass. The south wall ahead of you is glass, floor to ceiling, angled slightly outward at the bottom. The winter sun falls through it and lies in flat rectangles across the earth floor. In the greenhouse zone between the glass and the main living space, banana plants push toward the roof. Broad green leaves that have no rational business being here. It is January, 7,000 feet elevation, high desert of northern New Mexico, and the nearest tropical climate is 2,000 miles south. The banana plants do not appear to know this. You move deeper. The glass recedes. The walls thicken around you. You pull off your coat. The interior temperature is 68 degrees F. It has been approximately 68 degrees, varying no more than 4 degrees in either direction for the past 4 months. You look for the thermostat. There is none. There is no furnace in the utility room because there is no utility room. There is a small wood stove in the corner installed as a precaution by the original builders, and the kindling beside it has not been touched since September. Press your hand flat against the interior tire wall. Not your fingertips, your whole palm. It is warm, not room temperature. Warm. The way a stone wall feels when it has been absorbing sun all day, except this wall has been absorbing it for 4 months. Approximately 450 tire days of solar charging, representing a thermal battery, with a capacity calibrated to the climate of Taos in winter. Enough stored heat to maintain 60 ATRU through the longest cold night. Releasing it at the rate the interior air requires. No faster, no slower, without a control system, without a sensor, without a single decision being made by any mechanism more sophisticated than the physics of dense mass. Outside, 4° F, inside 68. The difference between those two temperatures, 70 seconds of separation, is being maintained right now by 318 tires, packed with approximately $95,000 lb of compacted earth. The tires cost nothing to collect. The earth cost nothing to excavate. The labor happened once, and now it continues doing what it did the day it was finished, and will do the same for the next 100 years without maintenance, without replacement, without a single payment to anyone. You sit on a bench built into the tire wall, the wall that no bank will finance, that no licensed contractor in 47 states would build under a permit. The bench is warm from the stored heat of 3 months of winter sun. Outside, 4, inside 68. The question that occurs to you is not how. The physics is not a mystery. Reynolds explained it in 1974, and it has not changed. The question is, why? Why? In the 50 years since the Thumb House proved the concept with energy costs averaging $2,500 per household per year, and rising with a housing crisis that has pushed the median American home price past $300,000 with peer-reviewed performance data confirming what Reynolds demonstrated in the desert. Has the structure that makes no energy bill necessary remained illegal in 48 states? The Prescott College study completed in 2001 monitored 14 Earthships across 18 months of weather that ranged from 17 to 108° F. Not one structure fell below 60 feet to their interior. The study is publicly available. It has been cited in academic literature. It has never been cited in an International Code Council update proceeding. The Brighton Earthship in East Sussex, England, was monitored by the University of Brighton across 9 years of occupancy. Results published through the UK Green Building Council. Interior temperatures maintained 60.8 average through British winters, reaching 14° F with no mechanical heating. The data is in peer-reviewed form. It has never been cited in an ICC update proceeding. Earthship Fife in Scotland was independently surveyed by Perth and Kinross Council after construction. The formal report concluded that the structure met, and in several parameters, exceeded the standards required for habitable residential occupation. Scotland sits at 56° north latitude. Taos sits at 36. If the system performs in Scotland, it performs everywhere. This survey has never been cited in an ICC update proceeding. What gets cited in ICC update proceedings consistently across multiple update cycles are submissions from the organizations that fund the ICC's operations and hold votes in the process that writes the rules. Reynolds testified before the ICC in 2012 and again in 2015. Both testimonies are public record. Both were rejected without substantive technical rebuttal. In 2012, the same year Brighton published its first decade of performance data showing thermal efficiency exceeding model projections by 12%, the ICC added language to Section R316, making tire wall construction explicitly non-compliant. With no data threshold that would trigger review, No pathway from documented proof to legal permit, he flew back to Taos and built another house. He is 79 now. The Greater World Earthship community northwest of Taos covers 634 acres and contains over 70 completed structures. Lot prices run from $40,000 to $120,000. Pre-built Earthships have a waiting list of 18 months. The average utility bill among residents is $247 per year, mostly internet service. The average energy bill is zero. The owner-builder exemption is the crack in the wall. 44 U.S. states have provisions allowing individuals to construct their own primary residence without a contractor's license or a code inspection, provided they personally occupy the structure. Reynolds' company estimates that between 200 and 400 Earthships are completed annually in the United States under this exemption. 200 to 400 houses per year that pay zero energy bills built by people who found the legal pathway the code left open because it was written for someone else. Belgium, France, Scotland, Bolivia, Argentina, Nepal, Cambodia, Malawi have built Earthships under standard building permits. Their governments reviewed the performance data and found the construction sound. In countries that did not inherit the International Residential Code as written, the Earthship is not a workaround. It is simply a building. The average American household spent $2,511 on energy in 2024. Over 50 years, adjusting conservatively for inflation, that household will spend $125,000 to operate a structure that has been demonstrated across 3 continents and 50 years of documented performance to operate itself. $125,000. That is the cost of Section R316. That is what the absence of one material from one approved list, maintained by one private nonprofit, funded by the industries that sell the competing materials, costs the average American household measured across a lifetime. Reynolds will testify again at the next code update cycle. The transcript will again be public record. The vote may again go the same way, and in 44 states, the owner-builder exemption will still be open. The physics will still be true. The tires will still be free. There is something particular about a building technique that was banned not because it failed, but because it succeeded. The usual arc of a suppressed technology is that it had a flaw, or it arrived before the market was ready, or the alternatives were simply cheaper. Reynolds' Earthship has none of those explanations available to it. The Thumb House worked in 1974. It worked in 1989 when they took his license. It worked in 2001 when Prescott College published the data. It works today in the Scottish Highlands and in a Belgian city, and in 70-plus structures in the New Mexico desert, in every climate where it has been built and monitored. The Earthship was not banned because the walls were unsafe. It was banned because the walls were unnecessary. Everything a modern house is required to contain — furnace, air conditioner, water heater, grid connection — is unnecessary in a structure built with adequate thermal mass, passive solar geometry, and a roof designed to collect what falls on it. The codes do not require these systems because they keep you safe. They require them because they connect you to supply chains that depend on your monthly payment to function. The house that needs nothing is a problem for everyone who sells something. And yet here it stands in 4-degree January, 68-degree inside. Nothing running, nothing burning, nothing build. The movement it generated is global in a way that code enforcement cannot reach. An Earthship community in Zipolite, Mexico, houses 60 families. A community in Taos has a waiting list measured in years. An Earthship in the Drakensberg Mountains of South Africa, built by volunteers over 3 weeks, maintained interior temperatures through an African winter that locals called the coldest in 40 years. An Earthship in the Scottish village of Kinghorn, built in 2004 by a group of volunteers who had never built anything from tires before, is still occupied and still monitored. Its thermal performance data regularly cited by UK green building researchers. Reynolds gave a TED Talk in 2012. He was 67 years old. He had been building for 40 years at that point. He said, "The demand right now is 10 times what it was in 2019. The codes haven't changed. The system hasn't changed, but the people have." He was right. The physics has never changed. The demand has never gone away. The only thing standing between the Thumb House and the American mainstream is a section of the International Residential Code that has never cited the performance data that contradicts it. Written by a private organization funded by the industries it benefits, updated every 3 years without modification, decade after decade, while the houses it prohibits keep standing and the energy bills it protects keep rising. The archive does not close here. Reynolds solved the energy problem. But there is a second problem older than energy bills, older than building codes, older than the International Residential Code, and every organization that writes it. The problem of the house itself, what it costs to build, what it costs before you ever pay a utility bill. There is a construction method that solves that problem completely. It costs $300 in materials. It requires no licensed contractor, no engineered lumber, no approved supply chain. It is made from the earth directly underfoot. One structure built with this method in New Mexico has been continuously occupied for over 1,000 years without a single structural repair. And it was made illegal in 48 states, not because it failed, but because it was too cheap to permit. That video is on your screen right now. Click it. If this story changed the way you look at the waste in our world and the potential of the earth beneath your feet, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Let's build a different future. The next archive will open soon.